If you were to Google the question, how many Nintendo consoles are there, the very reliable and always accurate AI will inform you there are 32, which is a lot. Nintendo has been a face in the gaming industry longer than most, and they have in fact put out many consoles, so you'd think, given their extensive history of making these machines, that they'd have it down to a T. They should know how to make a great console, and they do. On occasion. But Nintendo also really likes to do things different, which has led to some fascinating weak spots. Now, the Switch 2 is seemingly being kept as close to the Switch 1 as possible, so Nintendo minimizes the risk and guarantees that their longest running and most successful home console can reincarnate. But there's a lot of ways it can go wrong, as it has before. And so today I just wanted to take some time for a nice little stroll down memory lane. Every single Nintendo console and its biggest flaw. I only want to do major consoles released internationally to mark generations, and some of their revisions, I don't really think talking about the OLED Switch or the Wii RVL 101 is super important. Don't even get me started on the iQ. This list is also going to have some opinions. There's a lot of very good consoles that don't have any obvious flaws, so you kind of got to nitpick, and that's not going to be a challenge for me. Also, I'm going to try to stick to things chronologically, but neurodivergence. Activate. I want to kind of bounce around. I want to bounce on it. Let's kick off the day easy and take it back to 1983. The early 80s is a time filled with iconic culture and video games. Video games blow. Imagine the most unbelievable sucker, jank, glitchy shovelware you've ever played, and now imagine that's all you're able to buy in 1983. And it's made by Purina.
And your kids die too.
In the dog food video game era, where bad games made by people who don't care about them are the dominant life form, the market learns the powerful move called contempt. Rightfully so. Games had become expensive, low-effort attempts to capitalize on what developers saw and were forcing others to see as a trend. This event became known as the video game crash of 1983, and things were bleak for a while, until in 1985 when Nintendo delivers onto the shores of North America the Nintendo Entertainment System, where you know the games have to be good because they have the Nintendo seal of quality. Huh. You know the history from here. The NES is a crazy hit, challenges people to look at video games the way we know them today, appears in Beethoven. Given that the NES had such a huge part in turning the video game industry around, it is really difficult to say it has any sort of flaws, but for us Americans, there is one key side effect of such a savior complex. Because people at the time were so hypersensitive after the crash to anything looking like a video game console, Nintendo designed the NES to look more like a VCR. Instead of the cartridge going on top, it goes in the front. But the NES became notorious for boot-up errors because of A, bending the pin connectors when the cartridge is shoved downward, and B, buildup of grime inside the cartridge groin area, which is why people started blowing on cartridges and sometimes inside the console, and why Nintendo released an official cleaning kit in 1989. The infamous blinking red light that is, hey, no longer the first red blinking light you think of when discussing console failures. This led Nintendo to release the NES Top Loader, which, aside from looking ugly as hell physically, god damn, did your mother cry out of pity when she had you? It is far more reliable than the NES in terms of loading software, but removes the AV output and is RF only, meaning that the visuals take some damage. There is constant debate over which console is better, taking all the flaws into consideration, and if I can weigh in on this, if you have an original NES, just clean it, bro. It ain't that deep. Everything. Where do I even start? The Virtual Boy was intended to be the third pillar, not a successor to either at the time the Super Nintendo or the Game Boy. It was going to receive support and be its own thing. If that sounds familiar, Nintendo tries this often. The DS was supposed to be a third pillar to the Game Boy Advance, and the GameCube, the Switch, was supposed to be a third pillar to the Wii U and 3DS. My stepdad, he started out as a third pillar. It never works out, and if it does, not for very long. You can make an argument that the closest they've got was mobile during the 8th gen, but a year from their first mobile game and we'd see the launch of the Switch. Oh my god, 4 pillars? I say this next part in complete hindsight bias. There's no way Nintendo could have known then, but this +1 approach was probably the earliest indication as to something going wrong with Virtual Boy, but then it launches in 1995 for a staggering $180. It is cut off in Japan in less than 6 months, where it received only 22 games, 14 for us, after selling approximately only 800,000 units. Its biggest sin? It introduces Megami Tensei to the West like the invasive species it is. Thank you, Virtual Boy. So, Virtual Boy. Why does everyone hate this innocent little console? Because it destroys your body. It's not very comfortable to use. It has to sit on top of a surface at a fixed position, only slightly adjustable, which is not ideal for the human race of varying heights, unless you want to be Quasimodo after 5 minutes. Some have said that the Virtual Boy would have been a better fit if sold with some sort of head strap like a lot of modern VR sets, but understand that this is a very heavy device. The next strain would just be in a different area. And what I think is the console's biggest flaw, it's gotta be that stereoscopic 3D that causes headaches, dizziness, nausea. Video games are supposed to be fun, not give you diseases. But Nintendo over here made the Pestilence Boy that will literally destroy you from the inside out. Also, what the fuck is this controller? But if the screen ain't red, let's take it back to Nintendo's actually portable console when it was green. I guess I think green is a misleading compliment to whatever this is. As a handheld in the 80s, the Game Boy is monumental, and compared to something like the Virtual Boy, the screen is a lot easier to look at when it's not engulfing your entire field of vision, but a small portion of it. That said, vomit visuals aside, the screen is the console's greatest flaw. Due to it not being backlit and having the infamous screen burn that you may have seen pictures of, passive matrix making everything look blurry, and yeah, maybe I don't want everything to be green all the time. The contrast dial helps so that you can kind of find a good balance, but a simple backlight would have been way better. A simple backlight would have been way better. A simple backlight would have been way better. And releasing the Game Boy Light in America, that could have helped. The Nintendo 64 is the limousine pulling Nintendo up to the three-dimensional soiree, and it does that pretty well with an abundance of 3D platformers and adventure games. But not everyone possesses the knowledge and skill to become 3D. There are still many games that have fruit collecting and songs about eating ass. They have to have a console that can host both legacy and future design, so what do? They create the three-handed abomination. Man, I don't even want to see this thing. The idea was that when you play a 2D game, you position your hands like this so the D-pad and buttons are prioritized. And when you play a 3D game, you position your hands like this so the analog can be gripped. Allegedly, there's another way to hold it with the left and the middle so that it's all D-pad and analog. I can't say I've ever seen an N64 game that encourages this, though, and that's a good thing. None of these setups are comfortable. There are always buttons out of range. 2D position means that you can't use the Z button and have to reach for the start. 3D position means no L button. That, in addition to the plastic analog, which has two big faults. First, notice how most other joysticks after the N64 have some sort of rubber cover. And two, with the amount of games that require aggressive joystick action, it is very easy to grind down the plastic inside and loosen this bad boy up so that it never centers again. Or, as we know it, it drifts. Drifts. Wait a minute, why do I feel like... Nah, on second thought, we'll get there when we get there. Nintendo's secret weapon. Redmond Company hopes next generation Game Boy will help it win video game wars. You know, the Game Boy had like a decade-long run, which is, I think, the longest in Nintendo history. That's a lot of time to learn about the things that could be improved on. So how did this new Game Boy advance us into the 2000s? Okay, let's talk about it. Half-size cartridges, cool. LNR buttons, good. 32-bit, awesome. Backwards compatibility, damn, Danielle.
Back at it again with the Game Boy.
Backlit. It wouldn't bother me as much if, once again, Nintendo did not realize the demand for a backlight in 1998 with the Game Boy Light, a Game Boy with a light, released exclusively in Japan 3 years prior to the GBA. Surely they had to have known. But another drawback about the Game Boy Advance was that it still used batteries, and powering a console with a backlight on batteries is a very wasteful and expensive loop. The Game Boy Light was said to have around a 12-hour runtime with the light on, meaning that games like Gen 2 Pokemon averaging between 30 to 70 hours would eat up a lot of batteries. This is why when there is eventually a Game Boy model released internationally that is front lit, it includes a rechargeable lithium-ion battery. But before we get into that, the GameCube is a really frustrating example of a Nintendo console underperforming in the competition because from a gaming standpoint, Nintendo did everything right. They finally moved to discs, included GBA connectivity. The controller is so legendary, it's been supported on every home console since. And most notably is Nintendo's strong showcasing of their IPs. Most of their series got at least one entry on the GameCube. We're talking Animal Crossing, Star Fox, F-Zero, the birth of Chibi Robo, Wave Race, Battalion Wars, 4 Mario Parties, Path of Radiance. How could anyone not want this console? Oh, that's right, it doesn't f***ing play DVDs. I'm sure this will be a totally real concern 10 years from now. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a shift at Movie Gallery. The GameCube is canonically the last time we see Nintendo compete in the arms race for power, and they did so good. But because these two tryhards from gym class who are always partnering up, saying slurs, I actually love the PS2. I don't want to be mean. These consoles did what Nintendo don't. They could play DVDs, they could play CDs. Xbox had a complex online ecosystem. PS2 had USB ports. From a multifunctional standpoint, it got people who were not gamers behind the console. My sister, I love her. Not a gamer. She told my parents to get a PS2 because it would have made all of the kids happy. I could have played games and she could have watched Agent Cody Banks. Thankfully, my parents got us the GameCube and they got her a DVD player, but that's just us. Examining the sales for the 6th gen, you can see how important this was to families and how much it put the GameCube in last place, despite the fact that it was more powerful than the PS2 and cheaper than both competitors. Now, I know what you're thinking, so let me adjust. If I had to pick a non-competition related flaw about the GameCube, because it's kind of unfair to incite what it doesn't do as a weakness in the About Me section, I would say the decision to go with the mini discs is hand in hand with this. They can't hold as much data as the regular sized disc, which led to games being split across several discs, and maybe even why third parties were hesitant. Nintendo should have learned their lesson about storage size from the Nintendo 64, but don't worry because Nintendo absolutely learned their lesson about the GameCube in the 6th generation. Whether or not you agree with what happens next, evidently it was a brilliant move. They realized this race for the best graphics, for the fastest CPUs, it was endless, and pursuing it would make the evolution of video games much less exciting. And I think if you look at the last couple generations and the consoles on the market now, they were definitely right. So instead, Nintendo, perhaps feeling betrayed, starts thinking beyond the gamer delegation. They think about how something like a PS2 could have features appealing to those who don't play games. And I'm sure you know exactly what happens next. That's right, it's the Game Boy Advance SP. Absolutely flawless console, backlit, clamshell design that gets reused across multiple generations, beautiful. Look at this. Then they made the Wii. This is what getting severely beat by the weakest console on the market does to a motherfucker. You say, I no longer care about power. Give me to your grandparents. In the most Nintendo move ever, the Wii is the first console to make motion controls easy, accurate, accessible. The console is both the smallest and cheapest when this behemoth trapezoid cost $600 because the idiots at Sony let media playback go to their head. Learning the lesson Nintendo did just a generation earlier, you need to switch it up. That is a great pun. I also love the PS3, I don't want to be mean. The Nintendo Wii stands out by taking gaming down a different path, and it works. Oh, it f***ing works alright. We're not really here to discuss that though, just for the sake of people curious as to why Nintendo no longer builds their consoles around cutting-edge tech. Just simply look at where the GameCube failed and where the Wii succeeded. That's all you need. But some see the Wii not just as a transition into casual-oriented gaming, but Nintendo's abandonment of their hardcore gaming demographic. No high definition, very poor online. They started to explore media features. Still no DVDs. Yeah, honestly, I love the Wii, but I also played Halo 3 on an Xbox 360 for the first time that generation and discovered what it was like to participate in an online community phenomenon that is getting called so many awful things at the age of 10. The point being that even if the Wii offered something cool and original, it couldn't dismiss the deep experiences that were still resulting from games that chose a more traditional route, the cherry on top being the Wii Remote. Some think the controller is genius, others see it as the console's biggest flaw, the dedication to motion controls that would define this generation for Nintendo. At the time, it seemed like a fad, and the controller's unconventional design meant that the Wii would also suffer bad third-party support. Let me be clear, not a lack of third-party support, okay, so let's just give an example. BioShock. BioShock is an excellent FPS that I very much so recommend, released in the year 2007, originally for the Xbox 360. In 2008, it came to the PS3, but it did not come to the Wii, which is easy to understand. The Wii and Nunchuck aren't really ideal for this game, nor motion controls. It could be very graphically demanding. So what did 2K give the Wii in 2008 instead? Oh, baby, it's time for Carnival Games. I don't know if anyone out there is gonna come to bat for Carnival Games, but I'd love to see them try to defend the 56 it has on Metacritic. And yet, despite that, this game was a huge success, selling millions. Deca Sports, Game Party, shitty minigame compilations that broke the bank were the Wii's bread and butter, not to mention all the other shovelware dumped onto this console, while third parties either skipped it or, like Dead Rising, Far Cry, Call of Duty, suffered from the Wii's unorthodox controller and underpowered specs. But don't take my word for it.
Gameboy Micro, just a hair bigger and about 2/3 the weight of an iPod mini.
What exactly were they trying to accomplish here?
Yeah, man, the Game Boy Advance is great, but just wish there was a way my mouse could play it.
Dude.
The titular selling point of the Game Boy Micro is its biggest flaw. This is the type of shit that could only happen in 2005. Nowadays, we live in an era where every handheld device gets an XL version, but shrinking it? Even the commercial they chose to advertise it with features a mouse and Don't get me wrong, this console is neat. The screen is bright, the battery is chargeable, the faceplate's removable, but launching after the DS, you want us to buy a Game Boy Advance that plays neither DS games or original Game Boy games that's like 4 inches? I mean, hey, which for some people, hey, that's 4 inches. 4 inches is a totally enough, right? I love the Game Boy Micro. Production wrapped up by 2008, years before the SP. It is considered a flop by the masses. I just think of it as the Nintendo equivalent of the PSP Go, aka the Short Kings. Speaking of the Nintendo DS, put a finger up if you've ever had one of the hinges break. Hey, that's one for the Hinge compilation. The original DS is a great console, but design-wise, the hinges are very similar to the Game Boy Advance SP. They might even be the same, which would be an issue because the DS is a lot heavier on top, nah me? So I don't know how it went down for you guys, but just suddenly opening the console one day and my DS was just an S. Towards the beginning, it wasn't an issue. It was just a little broken piece. Eventually, the top screen went blank. It happened to both my original DS and this one, which belonged to my brother. And we're not alone. This happens to a lot of people. Some of them tear it off. Actually, many do, which has turned into the fan-coined Gameboy Macro because it can still play Game Boy games, which I don't know, that's just kind of funny. Another huge flaw the system has is the tiny stylus that gets lost all the time, so Nintendo deeply considers this and comes up with the brilliant revision known as the DS Lite. My goat. Sleeker, brighter, smaller, and yet somehow has a bigger, more comfortable stylus. The DS Lite is pretty free from flaws, so I don't want to waste a ton of time on it. I'm just going to say that the Game Boy Advance cartridge protruding out of the bottom gave me IBS. But I'll take that any day over not having it at all. Can anybody tell me a good reason the DSi should exist? No, exactly. I bought this day one under the premise of this magical thing all of my iPod Touch having friends got to experience called apps. F***ing apps. And the apps in question, Mario Clock, $2. Sorry, 200 DSi points. But as Nintendo's response to the emerging mobile market, it wasn't all bad. The front-facing camera felt like having the Wii photo channel on the go. The browser was a good way to surf the internet unsupervised. The sound app could play extremely low-quality music files. And there was some great downloadable software like Flipnote Hatena, which was free and a cool social media with creative expression. Honestly, it was YouTube for me before YouTube. Was this console worth leaving behind the Game Boy Advance slot? Honestly, no, and that is what I personally see as its biggest flaw. But let's look at it like this. Shoulder buttons. The DSi LNR buttons are notorious for breaking. Many owners have reported similarly. For whatever reason, they just get weak and dirty fast. And what was the common "I don't want to take my console to Nintendo" solution for a child? You'll never guess. To blow into the LNR buttons. To blow. We've gone full circle. The Super Nintendo, man, you guys ever tried to make a video talking about the biggest flaw from every Nintendo console and you get to the chapter on the Super Nintendo? I wanted to put this one later in because you gotta work really hard to find something wrong here. So true to its name, it's a significantly better NES. In fact, it might even be perfect. Launches with a great set of games, affordable price, a fantastic controller, the richest library. I mean, no, it doesn't have blast processing, but it has purple on the controller.
Purple is my favorite color!
This console is so amazing. There have been recent instances of people coming out to say that their Super Nintendo is working faster. It is literally aging like wine. Inside. On the outside, the console's plastic on some models will turn yellow with time. This phenomenon, commonly called SNES yellowing, is due to the UV rays reacting with a specific plastic or oxygenization, I guess. I don't know. For me, I think it's just piss. The good news is that with some cleaning solutions, you can fix this. Still, I think if a console's biggest flaw happens after it's run, that's a pretty good console. On the other hand,
earlier this morning, Nintendo finally announced that the 3DS will launch in the United States on March 27th for $250. Yep, that makes it more expensive than a Wii.
I want you to remember how much the 3DS was struggling in its first few months. People were calling it a flop, it had 0 games worth playing, and I love my 3DS, I always have, but in like April or May of 2011, I would totally resonate with that sentiment. What is this price tag? $250? Nah, Nintendo, you got me asthmatic. It takes a special level of brand loyal cuckery to want to pay this much to play this launch lineup. What kind of submissive, irresponsible, f***ing stupid? Yup. And I know only one other person who came home on March 27th, 2011 with a blue Nintendo 3DS, and that is Andrew. Ever since our souls have been linked, and even if he's far away when he feels pain, that's because I'm causing it. The 3DS receives a price cut the summer after it launched, also leading to the Ambassador program. It finally gets big originals like Mario 3D Land, Mario Kart 7, Devil Survivor Overclocked, you know, all that good. And sales go up a little bit, but something's up. A huge portion of the market is still missing out on the 3DS. Kids. Well, I think the 3DS's biggest flaw is definitely the price it launched at, which is something we have so much evidence to support. Keeping the rules to the console itself, the 3D could not be viewed by kids 6 and under. It was included in the health and safety manual by Nintendo, as well as getting tons of press before and after release, which kinda scared parents away from it. What could Nintendo do? I mean, maybe they could make a 3DS without 3D. Wouldn't that kind of ruin the whole thing of the console, though? That would be like a Wii without motion controls, or a Switch that can't be docked. Yeah. In addition to being the ugliest motherfucker I've ever had the pleasure of sharing a room with, it has no 3D support. Yay! Why are we cheering? Bros, now listen, 3D may be the console-defining feature we've selected for this family of handhelds, but if it keeps it out of the hands of the under 7 years old demographic because of potential harm to their developing vision, well, I suppose in that case, repeal it. For kids, the 2DS is genius. It's way safer, $70 cheaper than the XL, and it doesn't have hinges. You remember those things we talked about that broke all the time because of adolescent irresponsibility?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how kids happen in the first place.
The clamshell design is a double whammy though, because it's meant to protect and serve portability. Without either of those things, you have a square DS with its screen exposed that doesn't fit easily into pockets, specifically designed to be in the care of children. What can possibly go wrong?
Hot buttered popcorn, that's a deal.
it, let's do 10 of them. Number 1, the name. Much of this could have been avoided if it was just called the Wii 2. See 2025's Nintendo Switch 2 for details. Number 2, the price. Nintendo's most expensive console ever, with the deluxe set costing
$349.
about
$482.
in 2025 money. That's early 2025 money. Number 3, the advertisements.
Down Yoshi, underground Yoshi, jump Yoshi, then pound Yoshi. Whoa-shi. It's a double Yoshi explosion.
Number 4, the brick.
Why did my Wii U come with a murder weapon?
Number 5, lack of third-party games. Number 6, lack of first-party games. Number 7, abundance of bad or weird first-party games. The Wii U's first-party titles are not very strong. Stuff like Mario Tennis Ultra Smash, Paper Mario Color Splash, Animal Crossing Amiibo Bash, Star Fox Smokin' Hash. And others are not necessarily bad, they're just undesirable. Mario 3D World, fantastic game, but not the sandbox single-player experience that people clamored for at the time. Hyrule Warriors is not the new console Zelda we wanted to see in 2014. Kirby Rainbow Curse returns to the Canvas Curse formula. Mario Party 10 keeps the Mario Party 9 formula. Wii Sports Club, shall I say more? Number 8, the gamepad. I guess we gotta break this one down a little bit. The tablet screen not only confused gamers, as a whole it was just kinda impractical. Very few games utilized its potential, some tried, but it only made the game needlessly more convoluted. Like, as cool as it is to have the map in Xenoblade Chronicles X available and ready at all times, right in your hands, why couldn't we just include it as a second screen on the first? Oh wait, we can. There are games out there that absolutely feel better because of it, and DS Virtual Console is an absurd but miraculous concept that I'm not sure will ever happen again. But not only are games like that rare, now regular games also have to figure out how to utilize a second screen, aka every third-party game that can work on PS4 or Xbox One. Number 9, extremely long loading time. And number 10, the Wii U random death factor. I really think the Wii U is a neat little contraption, but if you ask me if it deserved to fail, I gotta say, Nintendo is to be blamed for its awful marketing, but it's kinda sad seeing them try so many cool things that went unrewarded. Splatoon is probably the biggest thing to come from the Wii U, but Miiverse and Wii U Chat, hell, a console without friend codes. This bad boy drips in personality, and just like before with the Gamecube, Nintendo decided it was time for a change. The Nintendo Switch may be Nintendo's most successful console, but you know what else it is? Fucking basic. It is their most boring console. I want you to remember what life was like before this. Nintendo is a company built on wacky, almost surreal concepts. Motion controls, a touch screen, a tablet screen. How does the Switch have all of that, but in the most dull manner? I mean, making a console that doubles as a home and handheld, doesn't it feel like that's been attempted a bajillion times before? Remember the eShop layout and its music, the seasonal themes that made it always fun to browse? The home screen's many applications or channels, Street Pass, Everybody Votes, themes, Miiverse. It was just all so Nintendo. Nintendo was so Nintendo, doing goofy directs and bits with their staff. None of that happens ever since the Switch. When you buy this console, it comes with nothing. You turn it on and are greeted by emptiness. No software, no music, even the Mii Maker is somehow just not fun. This is something I'm so hopeful that the Switch 2 will bring back to us. An identity, a sense of home and fun. Oh yeah, and Joy-Con drift. That's probably, that's a kind of an issue.